Okay, welcome to this quick demonstration of the main project in the 3D computer graphics and animation tech shop. My name is Thomas Proffen. I'm at Oak Ridge Computer Science Girls. I have taught this particular class, I think, once in person and either 2 or 3 times in a virtual setting. And I just wanted to show you by making the main project, which is making a little plane, that while 3D modeling software can look like has a lot of buttons, can look like very complicated to use, that is actually not that difficult to do. And also this class is very popular. I mean, it always amazes me to see how excited the girls are about using this and how many of them come up with questions later and clearly do this beyond the tech shop, which is always one of our goals. So this is just not long enough to give obviously any in-depth introduction, but it gets you to understanding the principles. And so for this not to take 2 hours, I will go to the Clara.io website. So one of the really nice things is we can actually do this in a web-based application. So you don't need to install anything. It actually works on a Chromebook. The only thing that sometimes takes a little extra care is if people have a mouse with no right mouse button. And there is a lot of information on the Clara.io website under Learn, under tutorials and user guide, that even talk about under the quick start videos, how do you navigate? How do you do kind of rotate things? And there's also in the user guide a description on, no, it's right mouse button for orbiting on Windows, and it is this mouse button on a Mac. So it is certainly important to know how it works on a computer that's different than the one the instructor uses, especially in a virtual setting where you often don't know all the different computers that people have. The main example in the class that really starts off with an introduction to animation and all the great careers it has, but the bulk of the work is actually after creating this plane. And there's an entire video tutorial in this that goes essentially through what I'm going to show you now. And that is the main project. And in the beginning, there are just some simpler exercises that just demonstrate some of the steps that are needed to do the plane. So, so let's do it. So, after kind of going to the main web page, create an account, which the girls might have done up front. I'm signed in. So when you initially, and probably most of the time it will look like this when you open it for the first time. And what is certainly true is that there's a whole lot of different symbols, and if you have not used software like this, it might be a little bit confusing on what does what. I should say that I am not doing this for a day job. I'm not an expert on this at all. I just have done this tutorial a few times, and I feel comfortable enough around Clara.io now to use it. So I believe if you spend 20-30 minutes with the tutorial and practice this, everybody can teach this class. I don't think you need to be an expert in this. In fact, an expert sometimes, when I watch a lot of YouTube videos where real experts show something, I always think I can do the 10-minute demonstration they do, and it takes me 6 hours to get through it. And so sometimes not being super proficient can actually be an advantage because it kind of forces you to go slow. Okay, so I need to make the plane. The first version of this recording was way too long because I got carried away. So the way we make the plane is basically it's a row of cubes, which is the body of the plane, and then wings and a tail fin. And while I'm making the plane, I'm going to explain some of the different things that might be worth. So up here we have like primitive shapes. There's a cube, and we build everything out of cubes, or a box in this case. There are other ones. So once we click on it, it puts a cube in there, and we have these 4 different views you can customize. Do you want to see it realistic, meaning there's a texture on it? Do you want to see just a wireframe, which is just the lines? What view do you want? Do you want to see it from the top, the left, the right, a perspective view, right? And most of the time, unless you line something up, you will probably not have all these views on. So to make this view, for instance, fill the entire middle part, you have this, you have expand buttons here, you have contract buttons here. And so now we just have this one. And if I made it small again, I would see all 4 of them again. And then there are some basic controls, how to move around. My left mouse button, and I'm on Windows, selects. My middle mouse button, if I hold it, lets me rotate around it. My scroll wheel lets me zoom. And my right mouse button brings up a context menu that I sometimes need. And there are some other ones, how you can pan and do other things by holding the shift key or the control key. And that is all in this demonstration video. So really, I actually, even if I teach it for the third time, I always quickly build the plane again. So because since I don't do it every day, I forget which button does what. And so, it's sometimes it just takes a little bit of patience. The other thing that about this is to keep in mind, what we often see is the instructor has some buttons on and I say, click on the extrude button, and lots of other people don't see the extrude button because a lot of the options you have here will depend on what you have selected up here. And there are like two sets of tools here. The upper one here where my mouse is now is I can select something, like if I had a second cube. And as soon as I have it selected, right there are things showing up here. When I go to the move, then you see how I get these little arrows. So rather than selecting, I can now grab these and I can move the object around. And the next one over is a rotating one. So if I click on this, my little handles become these wheels. And if I click on them and I hold them, I can rotate the object around. And then the last one is a scale one. And now these handles have not arrows but little cubes at the end, and I can, if I click on the X one, I go up and down and I can change the size. Okay. And then what we're going to need in a minute, and I'm going to show that, the second one is when I'm in select mode, when I now click on this, I get the entire cube. And I get this set of tools that allow me to modify the entire object. Now there's a set right here, which has the sphere on the back, which is the entire object. When I go one over, I can select just one face out of it. And the tools I have change. So often when a particular button is missing, maybe it isn't in face select mode. For instance, if you don't have the extrude button. And as you go down, you basically go down to the next smaller object. Now I can select an edge. And with this selected, I can use the same tools I have up here. I can move it. So when I go back from select to the move tool and I have an edge selected, I can just move this one around and I can make a wedge or something like that, right? Similarly, I could rotate just this part of it, make a weird object, right? Something like this. And then the last one that's here is you can select a vertex or a point. So they're hard to see, but they're little blue points when I have this selected. So when I hover over it, they turn green. And if I put the kind of move part back on, I can now just move that one point here. And so the very first set of exercises in the Techshop is just asking them to use an object like a cube and make like a funky looking distorted object out of it. Really just demonstrating selecting faces, selecting edges, selecting vertices or points, and then allowing to move them or scale them or rotate them. And that is a lot of fun. And so that's kind of the first exercise if you look at the Techshop, which is just how do I rotate it? How do I select something? What do all these different buttons do? One of the challenge we often have is there are all these other beautiful shapes. I think the hardest thing in this Techshop is to not have them try all the buttons that look cooler, right? Because it's very easy to go somewhere. There's many more things than even this entire Techshop covers that this can do. Okay, so first part is just that, and it's really just about simple object. Can I make it into look something like this? And then of course they can share what they did and do this. And then the bulk of the exercise is actually creating that plane. So what I'm going to do is because I want an undistorted cube to start with, I'm going to delete this one. So we go back to object selection mode, hit the delete key, and it's gone. We're putting a new one in, and that becomes our plane. And again, there is a video, so you can watch that. You can, of course, rewatch this one. And so what we want to do is we want to basically make a row of 4 cubes. but we want it to be one object. We don't want to bring out another cube and put it next to it. We need this mesh connected, which means we can't just have a separate cube sitting here. We need this edge to belong to both of them. And the easiest way of doing this is with a function that's called extrude. Think of, when you push cookie dough out of a, like when you make these funny cookies that come out of the bottom, or a meat grinder or something. I don't know. That's what I think when I think extruding. So we need to select a face to extrude. So I'm going to turn this a bit so I can select a face on the side here easily. It's highlighted. I click on extrude, which is the button that shows up. The extrude button is only there when I'm in face mode. So most of the time when somebody says I can't find the extrude button, they might still be in this mode and there's no extrude button. Right? The one thing where the video isn't right anymore because the default has changed is the extrusion length, like how far out does this part come, is not 1 anymore, but it's 0.2. And so when you watch the video that is part of the tutorial, this will come out and be as long as the cube that's already there. We actually need to click into here and change the 0.2 to 1. And we want 4 of them, right? So now we move out a bit, we extrude again, we put it to 1, we extrude again, we put it to 1. Right? Okay. So then the other way how we built the plane is we now need to make some wings. And the way we make the wings is we take one of those faces and we try to cut it in half. So we can only pull out the bottom part of it that will become the wing. And for that, we need to select 2 edges, basically where we want the middle line to go. So we select this one, and now it's red. And holding the control key, I can select a second one, and I can select more. And now that we are in edge selection mode, there's a different set of buttons here. And basically when we say connect them, we say connect the 2 edges you have like in the middle. And if I click connect, which I just did over here, then you see now we have a second face. There's a line here. Right? And what we need to do the same thing on the other side because we need 2 ones. So I'm going to use the middle mouse button. I turn it around. I select one edge. I hold control. I select the other edge. I connect them. And now I want to basically the same extrusion we did to make the body. We now extrude out the wing the same way. So I go back into face selection mode. I select the bottom part. And this I want to come out my way. So I click extrude. And again, it's not the length we want. So we change the 0.2 that's there to 1. And so there's one wing. We turn it around to the other side. We select this one. Again, I'm still in face selection mode. I go extrude. I make it 1. Right. So now we have actually a plane that has wings. And to make the tail fin, so before I start making them like not blocky anymore, I make all the blocks I need. So if this is kind of the front of the plane, this is the back, we want a cube coming out here, that becomes the tail fin of the plane. And I do exactly what we did all along. I select the face that's up there, I extrude it up, and I make it 1. Right? Well, that's kind of a weird looking plane, but okay, we leave it like that. Okay, so if we were in Minecraft, this would be the plane we have, right? This would be, I'm going to go to realistic in a minute so we can kind of see what we made. This is literally a cube. It's using extrusion to come out, and the one other command we used was selecting 2 edges and then use the connect to cut that face where the wing comes out into half. Now we can pick some of the edges and make the wings pointy and make the tail fin like, look more like a roof and pull out the cockpit. And so that's what I'm going to do next. So I just put in realistic mode to kind of show more what it looks like. I'm going to go back to wireframe up here because that's easier to model, right? So one thing we can do for the wings is we can just pick out the bottom edge. So I go back to edge selection mode like this one. And we can just pull it out, right? Then it will look like a wedgie, like a wedge from that face onward. Imagine you just pick this edge and you pull it out. So I have it selected. I go to moving mode and I pull it out maybe like this, right? And now I have a more profile looking wing. You can see it there. And of course, I need to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm on my right mouse button. I select the bottom here and I make sure I put it out about the same way. So it's kind of a symmetric looking plane. And there you go. And one thing I've skipped over, some easy way of getting something like in the window the size you want it is pressing the key, the key F for frame. So with the entire object selected, if I print F, it makes the entire plane kind of fit into the view that I have. If I had just a face selected, let's say I want to work on this part of the wing, and I click F, it will actually zoom into whatever the selected part is. So on a complicated object, that's a very quick way of zooming into the part you're working on. Right? So if I select my entire plane again, go back to object selection mode, click F, there's my plane. Right. Okay, so two more things we want to do to modify is we want to pick up the top here and put it together so it looks more like a tail fin of a plane. So I go just like I did when I did the wings. I go to edge selection. I select this one. I select that one. So I'm holding the control key for that to happen. And there are different ways. You could pick both of them separate, push them together. To keep it symmetric around the middle, I can also use the scale tool now. So with the two edges selected, I switch from move to scale. And I just pick this and I move them together a bit. And then I go back to object selection, so they are gone. And maybe what I want to do is pick this edge and move it in a bit so it's kind of slanting up and coming together. Now this is where, you can probably tell that I'm not a really good artist. So this is like the proportions and how much you push it. That's how you control how your particular plane looks like. Push it back like this. Okay. So now we have like a half decent kind of tail of our plane. And all we're really missing is a cockpit. So for that, I will just pick this edge and pull it up. So we get a little bit of this roof-looking cockpit. So again, I click on this one and I just pull it up until I feel like it's a cockpit. And there's our plane. And it's a very blocky plane. So now we can use some of the object modification tools to do something that's called a mesh smooth, which basically takes these kind of big blocks and cuts those faces into kind of smaller segments and rounds them. And so because it operates on the entire object, I need to go to object selection mode. And I just click up select. So object is what I want. I click select here so my little arrows go away. And so now I have a different set of tools here because see, when you go to face, different set, edge, different set, entire object. So I have a mesh smooth and I just clicked on it. And with one subdivision just means it takes the face it has and divides it in both directions, right? And it makes it smooth. So it kind of doesn't just cut it, but then it also kind of takes the vertices and makes it more smooth looking. And if I change the subdivisions from 1 to 2, you get even more lines and you actually get a nice looking smooth plane. So there it is. Right. Okay. So make it look realistic. There's our plane. The other two things, they're kind of optional. And this is to put a material on and to animate it. So it's in the descriptions, right? So if you want a material, you can kind of make a material in the render menu, materials, make a physical material. The problem is materials can be very, very complicated. So it makes a new material and you see kind of as I went render material, a physical material, it made one. I can click on it, right? And if I open the materials part here, I have a few choices. So for instance, I can change the color of my plane. I hope I can. Sorry, I need to open the material. So there, physical material, right? If you had some texture, you can put it on. So we can change the plane a little bit. You can make it more or less shiny, and do all these kind of things. So I will, in the interest of time, I won't do that. This could be its own class. I think what the girls always want to do is change color. And so the putting a physical material on and just go up here and change the color to whatever they want it to be is a good way of doing it. They can put a light into the scene if they want. And again, this is for the participants that are a little quicker in creating the model, what they can do. So there's our plane. And now we just want to basically make a little animation. And I'm going to show you how that works. So we want the plane to kind of go back here, take off, and take a turn. And then that's the end of this demonstration. So what you do with that is like keyframe animation. So we grab the plane, we put it at the starting point wherever we want it. I make sure my transform is open, so I see the position and the rotation of it. And down here is the timeline. So at time 0, I just basically click on this, and I click on this, and I click on this, and I say, well, this is the rotation and the position of the plane. Then I move my timeline and say, at frame 20, where do I want the plane to be? So I move it over, I move it up, maybe I rotate it a bit. So I click on the rotation one, and I make it bank a little bit and turn a little bit into this direction maybe, right? Oops. And now I need to say that, see the color has changed. The one thing that took me the longest to find out, to tell it, this is the position I want at this time. You need to click again on this one and that one. And then you see how it made you another yellow mark. Now you can move the timeline on, and you could move the plane further wherever you want it to be later. It's not going to be a beautiful animation, right? And it only turned them on. That change the rotation is the same. I can still click on it. And if I now move the timeline back, you basically, when you now click the play button here, the plane basically flies. And you could have more keyframe animations as you want, as more smooth kind of way. And of course, we can zoom out a little bit so we can see a little more of the flight path. So usually the modeling takes the bulk of the time, and we just make sure that we show the girls how the animation works in principle, and hoping that they will do more. And then they can share their project by clicking on share, and basically when you then open this link. So one of the things is in class, especially in a virtual class, for them to share what they did, they would click on the share button, and I'm just going to open another tab, and hopefully this pastes in here the way I want it. And so there is basically what I just did. And so yeah, when I saved it, my camera wasn't far enough away, so now there's the plane. So you even have the same way of rotating in this view, and that link they can share with their parents, show the other girls in the class what they did, and that will be associated with their accounts. If they log back in, it's right there. And so I think to wrap this up, it is a fantastic class to teach. It is something that always creates excitement. It is something where I always get confused at some point which button to press. And I think just figuring out with everybody who listens to you what to do is actually helping to take a little of the intimidation away that comes from how many different choices you have, and we haven't even clicked on half of them. And then with more tutorials, you can show, well, if you want to learn more, now you know the basics, and you can use YouTube and the videos and the tutorials that are there. So it is a fantastically rewarding class to teach. I hope some of you say, yes, I want to do this, I want to try this. Go to that webpage, make a plane, ask questions. I can't wait for the volunteer appreciation event when I can actually talk to you. And thank you for watching, and I hope I didn't run too long. And I'll see you on Thursday.